The real dance of dragons with fire and blood started on a horrific note when Aemond killed Lucerys. The Blacks knew that they had more dragons on Dragonstone than the Greens did in King's Landing. Prince Jacaerys decided that he'd get more dragon riders to put these dragons to good use. He announced that anyone who could mount the unclaimed dragons would be provided with generous land and lofty titles. People of Dragonstone were thrilled at the announcement, and many tried to ride these dragons. But unfortunately, many perished as well, because a dragon is not a horse. It burns and eats you when you provoke it. In this video, we'll explore the several unclaimed dragons that were present in Westeros when the dance began. Let's Dracarys. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Vermithor, unclaimed, but Daemon sings to Vermithor in the finale. In the final episode of House of the Dragon Season 1, Daemon sings to the mighty Vermithor in High Valyrian. The song is about the doom of Valyria and the winged leader, or Aegon the Conqueror. But in reality, Daemon was just trying to make the dragon get reaccustomed to humans because it was time for it to take flight once again. The dragon's first and last rider until the beginning of the dance was the old king, Jaehaerys. After Jaehaerys died, Vermithor remained unclaimed and resided in Dragonstone. Now that the war had started, the Blacks would need all the dragons they could get, and Vermithor was a huge dragon, second only to Vhagar. With a small but powerful appearance, Vermithor has stolen the show and raised the expectations of fans. But what happened to Vermithor in the books? What's his origin and end like? Fire and Blood does not confirm anything about Vermithor's birth year, but it is certain that he was a big dragon around 42 AC. He had hatched from an egg that Rhaena Targaryen had placed in her brother Jaehaerys' cradle in the year 34 AC. 7 years later, in 41 AC, Jaehaerys' father, King Ennis, died due to natural causes, and it was Vermithor who, along with Quicksilver and Silverwing, contributed his flames to King Ennis' pyre. But after the death of Ennis, his younger brother Maegor usurped the throne and later killed his nephew, Prince Aegon. Queen Visenya supported her son's claim and kept the siblings Jaehaerys and Alysanne and their mother Alyssa as hostages on Dragonstone. But when Visenya too passed away, the three of them fled Dragonstone on Vermithor and Silverwing, Alysanne's dragon. But Jaehaerys didn't have to wait for too long, because King Maegor himself died on the Iron Throne a few days later, and Prince Jaehaerys was free to claim the throne without any mortal danger. Maegor the Cruel was loathed by the small folk and the nobles alike, and the young prince's claim was welcomed. Jaehaerys travelled far and wide on Vermithor. In fact, he and Queen Alysanne once visited Winterfell. King Jaehaerys didn't need to take his dragon to many wars because he was a peaceful reign, and when the old king passed away in 103 AC, Vermithor became riderless and remained so until the Dance of Dragons started. Among the people who tried to claim Vermithor, Lord Gorman Massey faced the worst fate as Vermithor burned the man to his death. Vermithor was a mighty dragon and wouldn't have settled for someone lesser than him. He ultimately accepted a dragon seed named Hugh Hammer, a blacksmith's bastard. Having Vermithor in the fold was crucial for the Blacks, and along with Silverwing, Vermax and Seasmoke, Hugh Hammer rode his dragon to the battle in the Gullet. The dragon rained fire on 90 warships of the Triarchy. After Rhaenyra took King's Landing, Hugh Hammer and Vermithor followed, and the dragon made its lair in the Dragon Pit. However, it soon went to another battle, a battle that would prove to be a major turning point in the Civil War. It was the battle at Tumbleton, during the course of which Hugh defected to the Greens because of better prospects. Vermithor and the other dragons serving King Aegon II desecrated the town of Tumbleton and sacked the city. Vermithor and Hugh remained with the Hightower army at Tumbleton, but Hugh's ambitions led him to do something unimaginable. He noticed that King Aegon II had been missing and Prince Aemond was dead. So Hugh thought this was the right time to press his claim to the Iron Throne, but that didn't end well for him. It turns out that riding the biggest dragon alive since Vhagar was dead does not ensure that one becomes king. Hugh was killed, and Adam Velaryon on his dragon Seasmoke attacked the Hightower army. Some 40 knights lost their sorry lives in an attempt to kill Vermithor, but they did manage to wound the dragon. Vermithor flew and wreaked the good old fiery havoc on those around him, only to be ambushed by Seasmoke from above. The two dragons fell to the ground, entangled with each other, rolling over the field. In the end, Vermithor locked his teeth in Seasmoke's neck, killing the smaller dragon. The victor attempted to fly, but he was seriously injured, and his wings were tattered. Unable to fly, the huge dragon breathed its last, while Silverwing landed beside him, mourning Vermithor's death. Silverwing. Much like Vermithor, Silverwing hatched from an egg that Princess Rhaena had placed in the cradle of Queen Alysanne Targaryen. King Jaehaerys married his sister Alysanne, and the two of them proved to be one of the best rulers that the Seven Kingdoms ever had. A major reason behind this was the fact that Jaehaerys spent a good amount of time meeting with the lords who had sworn fealty to him, and he also held an audience in several villages and towns. Understanding the problems of the subject is important when it comes to keeping the subject happy, something that today's politicians globally could learn from King Jaehaerys. Nevertheless, Jaehaerys on Vermithor and Alysanne on Silverwing would travel far and wide across the Seven Kingdoms, such as Old Town, Storm's End, Dragonstone, etc. But their most interesting and adventurous journey had to be the one to the north in the year 58 AC. When Alysanne reached White Harbor on Silverwing, the 1,000 who had gathered there were struck with awe and terror. The humble northerners could not believe what their eyes were seeing. When she reached Winterfell, Lord Alaric Stark did not allow Silverwing to allow the dragons within his castle walls, but Queen Alysanne convinced him otherwise and in fact made him approach the dragon. Reminds me of the first time Jon touched Drogon in Game of Thrones. Since Jaehaerys was stuck in King's Landing, Alysanne had arrived alone and was growing impatient, so she flew Silverwing to the wall. She stopped at Last Hearth. However, Silverwing did not like the wall. She tried to take her dragon north of the wall at least thrice, but Silverwing turned south each time. Clearly, Silverwing hated the cold. Could it also be something else? Could it be that Silverwing knew what darkness lay beyond the wall? Interestingly, Silverwing had never refused any of Queen Alysanne's commands, so this behavior troubled Alysanne even more. However, by now, King Jaehaerys had arrived at Winterfell, and the couple carried on their journey to places like Torrhen Square and Barrow Town, before returning to King's Landing. Queen Alysanne and Silverwing shared a warm relationship, but that came to an end when the Queen passed away in 100 AC. Silverwing came to Dragonstone after that and made her lair on Dragonstone. She remained there for almost 3 decades before she was mounted by Ulf White. Silverwing was the most docile of the 4 dragons who were claimed during Prince Jaehaerys' sowing of the seeds, but that doesn't mean she was a sheep. She was every bit as ferocious as any dragon of her size. Much like Vermithor, Silverwing participated in the battle in the Gullet and returned to King's Landing after it was taken over by the Blacks. But Ulf the White had defected to the Greens, and that meant Silverwing was also fighting for the Greens. The Second Battle of Tumbleton was an epic carnage in which numerous knights and men-at-arms died, but it also took the lives of Vermithor and Seasmoke, 2 fierce dragons. Ulf White had been sleeping through the battle, and Silverwing took flight on its own. She stayed away from the battle and circled around for hours before landing near Vermithor, the dragon she often coiled with. Later, Ulf White was poisoned by the Hightowers because he wished to be hailed as king. This left Silverwing bereft of a rider once again. Silverwing was one of the 4 dragons who survived the horrific dance and lived on a small island in the Red Lake for the rest of her life. Cesarian. Okay, book fans, before you get all angry with me, hold on. Some of you may know that Daeron Targaryen claimed Cesarian as early as 120 AC. That's way before the dance actually started. But I have to put the Blue Queen on this list because Daeron has not appeared on the show just yet. Both Martin and the showrunner have confirmed that Daeron Targaryen will be making his appearance when it's needed, and trust me, it will be needed sooner than later. For now, Daeron is in Old Town, serving as a cupbearer to the Lord Hightower of Old Town. So, until the time the youngest son of Alicent and Viserys does not make an appearance in the show, it is safe to say that Cesarian is unclaimed. So, what's the deal with Cesarian? What was the she-dragon's role in the book? After the battle on the Honeywine, Daeron Targaryen rightly claimed that the victory belonged to his dragon. Daeron had ridden Cesarian to the Reach so that he could help Lord Ormond Hightower and his men in their fight. Had it not been for the Blue Queen, the Green Army would have faced a certain defeat. After the battle, Daeron and Cesarian chose to stay with the Hightower host, and Cesarian served as the Green Army's scout by going ahead of the army. Not only did the dragons serve as a great scout, but it also helped in intimidating the Black Loyalists, who did not sign up for Dragonfire in the course of the battle. I mean, these guys would abandon their posts at first sight of Cesarian. I'm surprised that they chose to be part of a war that was called Dance of Dragons. The Hightower host reached the small town of Tumbleton for the first battle there and met a small resistance from the Blacks. Guys, trust me, I wish Mr. Martin had chosen a different color to represent Rhaenyra's side. I mean, every time I say the Blacks, it kind of reflects another meaning altogether. Nevertheless, the Battle of Tumbleton was a lost cause for Rhaenyra's men because Ulf White and Hugh Hammer had switched sides. But as I already mentioned, both the Dragon Seeds were killed because they wanted to become kings. A couple of days later, Adam Valerian, a dragon seed legitimized by Corlys, attacked Tumbleton on Seasmoke to mark the Second Battle of Tumbleton. Cesarian had lost her rider by now, but she still fought with Adam on Seasmoke, as if she knew where her true allegiances lay. The two dragons engaged in a battle that looked like a mating dance, but when Vermithor joined the fray, the balance tipped. Seasmoke attacked Vermithor from above, and the Cesarian joined in. The battle turned fatal for all of the three dragons, with Cesarian dying last, but she did not die of her own. The dragon was mortally wounded and was in immense pain, unable to fly. Lord Benjicott Blackwood ordered his archer to end the dragon's suffering, and the archer, Billy Burley, shot Cesarian thrice in the eye. The cobalt blue dragon had blue flames. I think that would be something to watch on the show in the next season. If it is two dragons I would absolutely love to breathe fire, it has to be Cesarian with its blue flames and Balerion with its black flames. Cannibal. Cannibal was an extremely large cold black dragon that lived on Dragonstone. Although its exact age is a matter of contention, it's been confirmed that Cannibal has been in existence since the time King Jaehaerys was still young. However, it's also certain that Cannibal was the eldest of the unclaimed and untamed wild dragons. So, this ferocious and violent dragon gets its name from his eating habits. He would attack the smaller dragons and dragon eggs of Dragonstone. He'd made his lair on the eastern side of Dragonmont and preyed there. Even before Prince Jaehaerys called for the sowing of seeds, many locals had attempted to claim Cannibal, but the dragon was wild in the truest sense of the word, and naturally, he burned them to the ground before eating them and filling his lair with their bones. These stories were famous on Dragonstone, and when Prince Jaehaerys asked the dragon seeds to tame dragons, none of the dragon seeds approached the cannibal. And yet, the cannibal managed to devour a man named Silver Denis and his sons. Silver Denis was trying to ride the sheep stealer, but the dragon tore off Denis's arm. When his sons tried to help Denis with the wound, the cannibal arrived, scaring Sheepstealer, and devoured the men. The small folk were of the opinion that the cannibal had been there on Dragonstone even before the Targaryens arrived there from Valyria in 114 BC. This would mean that the cannibal was from a different lineage altogether, and would explain why he was so violent towards the Valyrian dragons. But there is no evidence to support that dragons existed anywhere else in the world apart from Old Valyria. Naturally, such claims may be an old wives' tale. Furthermore, even if assumed that it was true when the cannibal was born just a year before Balerion arrived on Dragonstone in 114 BC, it would make the cannibal at least 244 years old. Now, we know that Balerion died of natural causes at the age of 208 years in the 94 BC. Now, we do not know if that's the regular life expectancy of a dragon, but Cannibal does not show any signs of old age, and could live for 3 or 4 decades. I hardly think that it makes sense to say that Cannibal existed on Dragonstone before the doom of Valyria. Irrespective of his age, none can deny that the Cannibal was a fierce dragon who was feared by humans and dragons alike. The dragon didn't take part in the Dance of Dragons, and was one of the 4 dragons who survived the dance. Sheepstealer. Sheepstealer has been described by Mr. Martin as one of the ugliest dragons in all of Westeros. The mud-brown dragon was not entirely aggressive around humans and preferred to eat sheep. But, you know, a dragon does not hiss when provoked, it burns and eats you. Although he never harmed a shepherd, the same could not be said about the sheepdogs. The dragon had hatched when the old king was still quite young. However, no date has been mentioned. Like the other wild dragons, it made its lair on Dragonmont and hunted sheep between the length and breadth of Driftmark and the Wendwater. No one had mounted the dragon for at least the first 50 years, and it was one of the reasons why it disliked humans. And with each passing year, it became increasingly difficult to mount the slender dragon. No one dared to mount the cannibal, and Grey Ghost was impossible to track. This left Sheepstealer as the only wild dragon available. Many tried to mount the dragon after Prince Jaehaerys' call, and many perished. However, a girl named Nettles managed to mount the dragon using trickery. She would leave a freshly slaughtered sheep for the dragon to eat every morning. Over time, Sheepstealer became accustomed to the presence of Nettles. Step by step, she inched closer to the dragon, until she finally mounted the beast. Sheepstealer had joined the other dragons serving Rhaenyra at the Battle of the Gullet, and after King's Landing was taken, Sheepstealer made its lair in the Dragon Pit. Nettles and Sheepstealer proved to be great allies for Rhaenyra, but everything changed after Ulf White and Hugh Hammer ditched Rhaenyra to join the Greens. Rhaenyra had become plagued with the fear that even Nettles and Adam Velaryon, the other two dragon seeds, would ditch. So she ordered that they should be murdered. However, Rhaenyra hated Nettles more because Mysaria had hinted that Nettles was having an affair with Daemon. When the prince left on Caraxes to hunt down Aemond, Nettles and Sheepstealer joined them. They were now at Maidenpool when Lord Manfred Mooton of Maidenpool received the order. But he couldn't kill Nettles as she was his guest and was protected under the guest rights. So he altered Daemon about Queen Rhaenyra's orders, and the next morning Nettles fed her dragon the biggest ram available in the castle and left. Nettles and Sheepstealer were last seen in a cave in the Vale. Interestingly, despite being the rider of a huge dragon, Nettles was in a ragged state. The two then flew into the depths of the Mountains of the Moon, never to be seen again. Grey Ghost. Grey Ghost gets its name from its colour and nature. The pale grey and white dragon was an extremely shy dragon who preferred to stay away from humans for years at a stretch. However, he would sometimes be seen flying close to the waters, from where it would snatch fish. Because it was so elusive and difficult to find, no one could attempt to mount it. However, in the year 130 AC, the crew of a ship named Nessaria had witnessed the shy dragon fighting another dragon above Dragonmont. By now, Rhaenyra was sitting on the Iron Throne and most of the Greens had to flee. Among these was Aegon II, who was sent to Dragonstone by Larys Strong. Quite correctly, Larys thought that Rhaenyra's own stronghold would be the last place she would check for Aegon. Anyway, when Aegon heard the story about Grey Ghost and something about a golden dragon, he was sure that it was Sunfire. Aegon began his search and found out that Sunfire had come to him in Dragonstone and had slain Grey Ghost. That's about all that happens around Grey Ghost in the book. Sea Smoke. So we all know that Sea Smoke was written by Sir Laenor Velaryon in House of the Dragon. While that's correct, the book and the show have a couple of stark differences. In the book, Sir Laenor is killed and doesn't escape. Secondly, Sir Laenor never took Sea Smoke to the battle at the Stepstones. In fact, Sir Laenor was not considered to be the fine knight as he'd been portrayed in House of the Dragon. Now, if we consider the book, Sea Smoke becomes riderless after the death of Sir Laenor. But in the show, Laenor is not quite dead. However, he has left the ugly politics of Westeros and the infighting in House Targaryen, so it's safe to assume that Sea Smoke is riderless, at least until Sir Laenor returns, but the chances of that happening are minimal. Anyway, once Sea Smoke became riderless, Adam of Hull answered Prince Jacaerys' call and mounted Sea Smoke. It was said that Adam and his brother Alyn were bastard sons of Prince Laenor Velaryon, but everyone knew Laenor's taste. Naturally, people came to believe that Adam was the bastard son of Lord Corlys. Either way, Adam had Velaryon blood in his veins and it may have helped him claim Sea Smoke. Later, Corlys had requested Rhaenyra to legitimize Adam of Hull as Adam Velaryon, the heir to Driftmark. While Rhaenyra remained in King's Landing, Sea Smoke and two other dragons were tasked with the protection of the city, and the Grey Dragon had made its lair in the Dragon Pit. As I mentioned earlier, Rhaenyra had ordered the death of Nettles and Adam Velaryon, fearing that even they would deceive her. But when Rhaenyra's men went to arrest Sir Adam, he was already prepared to escape. In reality, he had been warned by Corlys about the impending doom. Corlys had named Adam the heir to Driftmark and didn't want to lose the third heir, already having lost Laenor and Lucerys. Rhaenyra lost not only a loyal man and a dragon, but also Corlys Velaryon, her hand. Adam and Sea Smoke would then appear next at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, but I've already mentioned how that turned out to be. So we'll move on to our next entry. Dragon eggs. So, even though the show has not talked about them, there are 3 dragon eggs that would give birth to the dragons Shrykos, Morgul, and Stormcloud. Yes, they did bond with Prince Jaehaerys, Princess Jaehaera, Aegon III, but it is safe to assume that they're unclaimed as of now. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.